Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are covering the counting $10,000 technique, and I'm going to cover this, and this chapter is out of my book, You Are the Way. This is chapter 5.2, the guide to manifesting wealth. I actually have my own testimonial here I'm going to share in this video as well. And something else I've been really excited to share with all of you, all of my supporters, all of my subscribers, all of my followers, all of you guys that have supported me for so long. I created this 10K challenge PDF workbook where I'm putting all this together, where you're counting $100 bills every single night, but I go over the procedures with you, and you actually have a tangible copy that you can keep with you by your bed and read this right before you actually go in to your imaginal act to create it. And why I think having a tangible copy of this is so important is because it's a reminder. A lot of us just want to go to sleep. We just want to go right to sleep, and we forget to do the lessons. We forget to use our imaginations. We forget to affirm. We forget to visualize. We forget to script. But if you actually have a tangible copy and it's sitting next to your bed on your nightstand, it's going to be pretty hard to forget. And that's why I've created this, is because a lot of people tell me that they've had success with this. There's also a lot of people who say they haven't had success with this. And when I'm coaching them and I'm really getting down and I'm really picking their brain apart, I figure out that they didn't actually do it. They would skip 2 or 3 nights. They do it for one night, then skip the next night, skip the next. I had this going on. I couldn't do it that night, or I forgot to do it. You know, so these PDF printout workbooks, put them on your nightstand. You will remember. They will remind you to do this. You will not forget, because if you do this, if you actually follow the lessons, just like I point out in this 10K challenge, you will have success. And the reason I know this is because I've used this myself and it's worked. And I'm going to share my testimonial in this video with you today. But I've also used it in other instances where it's worked for me, and I've used it in other instances where it hasn't worked for me. And the times that it didn't work for me is because I would skip nights. I would forget. And that's the sole basis of why I've created this printout. That way you can have it next to your bed. You can have that reminder to make sure that you do it. Because if you follow it, like it points out in this 10K challenge, then you will have success. So begin today to start using your imagination. You can find that link in the description below. It's going to be the very first link in the description below. I'm also going to pin that to the comments. So hit that link, check out my website. We also have the 30-day affirmation challenge and Neville's VIP course as well. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and jump into the guide to manifesting wealth, the counting the $10,000 technique. And remember, knowing it is only half the battle. Knowing what to do is only half the battle. Actually applying what you learn and what you know from this is another. So don't forget. Do not forget to do the exercise. Do it yourself and you will have success. All right, so imagination. Get a $100 bill, euros, or whatever currency you prefer, and memorize it very carefully with all of your senses. Take the note in your hand, feel it. Actually, take the $100 bill, just like I described in my testimonials that I've made when I use this myself and I had success. Grab the $100 bill, spin it around, crinkle it in your hands, smell it. So actually smell the $100 bill. That way you can, and then flip it around, look at all the lines, all the creases, everything, okay? And notice the odor of it. Just like I said, take the note in your hand, feel it, feel the difference. The normal paper it smells unique, individual odor, and listen how it sounds when it is crumbled and smoothed out. Take a close look at the $100 note. Memorize every detail, the color, the blue ribbon, the portrait of Franklin, the numbers on the front. Then do the same with the back. Memorize the gold 100, the building, and the phrases. Now that you have memorized the $100 note in detail, start the imaginative act. Lie down in bed in an unusual position. Okay, so when we say this, like my grandfather stated, don't just lay down in a position where you usually just go right to sleep. Okay, you want to lay in a position where it's kind of a little bit odd, where that way you don't fall asleep right away. That way you can use this, and I get into more detail in the 10K challenge with this, but the point of this is so you don't fall asleep right away. Okay, so the following breathing technique can help you center yourself. Breathe in deeply. So you just do a few breathing techniques. Breathe in, breathe out, and just get relaxed. That way you're disconnected from the three-dimensional world and you're in a peaceful state. You're in this peaceful state. You're in an odd position where you're not going to fall asleep right away. So, and then close your eyes and start counting. So you're going to start doing this in your imagination. You use what you use in the three-dimensional world, because now you've studied the $100 bill or whatever bill you could find, whether it was a 50 or 20. or as a euro, whatever currency that you prefer, you're looking at it in the three-dimensional world, then you're studying it and downloading all this information for your imaginal act. So now you're going into your imagination. You're going to start counting these stacks. Count 10 stacks of 1,000 each in 10 by $100 notes. Count the money as you would count 10,000 in real life. During the imaginative act, make sure you look as you would look with your eyes open. Okay, so do not see yourself from behind or from a third person. Always be in the first person, okay? When you're counting this, you're actually counting this. And in the 10K challenge, I go over this where you need to take ownership of it, because if you know my testimonial, the first time that I did this, I counted it. I ended up counting the $10,000, but it was for somebody else. So I counted it. My imagination, I'm like, okay, so I created this, me counting the $10,000, but I didn't have the ownership of it. So do it when you're counting it, count it in your own house. So create the scene around you a little bit. Like, where would you be in your own house or your apartment, or or your loft, or wherever you live, wherever you own and you reside. That way there's an ownership of it that is correlated with the counting. That's something that I didn't do. I didn't create the space around me the first time I did it, but the second time I did it, I did do that. And that's what created the ownership of it. So make sure that you do that, because ownership of it is very important, because if you're just counting the $100 bills, it could happen just like it happened to me, where someone else asked me to count their $10,000, which was all $100 bills. All right, so now I'm going to cover my testimony on how I created. Is actually one way that I actually did. I've done this, but I've done this on multiple occasions and it's worked. I've done it for more money than this and it worked. But this is my testimony on how I created $10,000 in cash. The first thing I applied was to take a $100 note and study it in depth. The first thing I would do is visualize. I used my mind and focused on the $100 note. I took it, I flipped it back and forth. I smelled the note in my imagination. I downloaded all the information. I felt it without having a physical $100 note. Then what I did was I counted 10 stacks of $1,000. I counted 10 stacks of $1,000, which equals $10,000 in my imagination. I did this for 3 nights. Okay. So on the 4th day, I went to a bank. This is where, see, the first time I did this, I didn't have the ownership of it. I didn't create the space that I was in. So I didn't feel the ownership of the money. And this is what happened. On the 4th day, I went to a bank. It was Bank of America. A guy in front of me turned around. I was waiting in line to see the clerk, and the guy turned around and said, "Hey, I keep counting this money and I feel like I'm not counting it right away. Can you help me count it?" I thought this was very strange. But I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So I thought, here it is. This is strange. This guy doesn't even know me. He wants to help. He wants me to help him out, count his money. But I said, okay, I can do that. No problem. So I walked over, and there was a table on the side where we moved from the line, and I helped him count. I put the money down, and it was $10,000 in cash. Well, it was actually a little bit less than that. It wasn't exactly $10,000, but it was like right there. It was so close. Okay. So he put the money down, and I said, my God, this is exactly what I was doing in my imaginative act. So I realized at that moment when I counted it for him, I realized that this is what I created. So what did I do wrong? Okay. I manifested counting $10,000 in cash. Okay. I manifested that with my imagination. This is why this event happened in my 3-dimensional holographic world. So, but what did I do wrong? Because it wasn't my money. The ownership of it. When I was counting it, I didn't feel the ownership of it. And that's where I changed it up a little bit, and I changed it completely. I had created $10,000 for myself, but it wasn't my money. I basically was counting someone else's, which had been brought to me. So I went back in my imaginative act and started working on it to where I'd be counting my own money. And I did this by creating my own space. Okay. I did it in my own apartment or my own house at that time. So the guy in the bank wanted me to count his money, even though I didn't know who he was, but I did. And it happened to be exactly $9,800. Okay. So I counted $9,800 in cash for a guy I didn't even know. My imagination created that scene. When I drifted into the subconscious mind, I didn't bring in the feeling of the ownership of that money. So I went back into the imaginative act and worked on the feeling that it was my money. I'm counting out the money. This is my money. I'm taking that feeling in. Okay. I did also use those affirmations while I was doing it. I wasn't saying those affirmations out loud, but while I was in my own space, I said, this is my money. This is my money, my $10,000 as I'm creating it while I'm counting it in my imagination. So I think I did that for approximately 6 or 7 nights. I did it over and over. Yeah, I don't remember, but it was more than 3 nights that I did this, or more than 4 nights. I just did it. Because I knew it was going to work, because that, like, once I counted the money, because this is when I first started manifesting things, and my grandfather brought this to me. This is like one of the very first things that I did when it came to like getting large amounts of money. At that time, that was a large amount of money to me. So and once I counted that money, and the guy at the bank wanted me to count his money, and when I counted, I knew that I created. That's what I created in my imagination. So I'm like, I'm going to do this till it works, because I know that I can do this, because this happened right here because of that. What are the odds? All right, there's no coincidences. Everything is predetermined. Okay. So when I drifted into the subconscious mind, I didn't bring in the feeling of the ownership. Okay. So I did that for approximately 6 or 7 nights. I did it over and over. I did it again, and nothing happened. I think it was the 8th or 9th day, approximately 2 days after I had stopped doing it. And I got a phone call from a guy who builds boats. At that time, I ran a boat repair service. I owned a boat repair business. And I had a guy that contacted me about boats. He said he had this job he wanted me to look at. And I went there, and I made an offer, and he made a counter offer, and that happened to be exactly $10,000 in cash. When I finished the job, the guy paid me in cash in bills, and I counted them right in front of him. 10 stacks, $10,000 in cash. It manifested. It was my money this time. See, but the way this works, okay, so if you're counting money and you have a business that is going under or something like that, or you have some vehicle of providing some service, usually that's the way that it'll come to you. You'll have someone that needs a service from you that's going to give you that exact amount of money. Sometimes it can come other ways where you don't have to work for it. But in this way, I had a vehicle or a service where I could provide something for someone to make that money. So when I created this imaginal act, this guy may have been wanting someone else to do it, some other business, this job. But once I created that imaginal act, he turned his mind through the law of thought transmission. Then all of a sudden, he probably saw one of my ads. Then he calls me, and then we work this out, and then his $10,000 in cash worked out perfectly. So the universe aligned. The subconscious mind created the world, shifted alternate realities, and made this whole thing work out to where I got that $10,000. And this is what it'll make it happen. Sometimes you'll have to provide a service for it, but it's not always the case. You know, it could be a magical way too that you can get the money as well. But either way, this technique works like magic, whether you got to provide a service for it, or whether it comes in a magical way or just falls right out of the ceiling to you. It works just like magic if you can master this technique. And if you can do it consistently every single night, not miss any nights and not forget, then you can absolutely master this and use it for anything else. This can be like a stepping stone. Once you master this, then you start learning you can use this for anything. Once you start counting the money, and the money actually comes to you, and you're counting actual money, people are coming to you and asking them to count your money, and then you have this money, and then it works out to exactly, I mean, there's no coincidences once this starts happening to you. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so intimate and personal with the 10K PDF workbook challenge, is because if you can master this, and I want everyone to use this, I want you to invest in yourself and learn how to use your imagination to create anything that you want. And this will develop the muscle of the mind to be able to move to higher levels once you do this. But once you see this, once you actually see yourself counting $100 bills or $50 bills or euros or whatever currency you prefer, then all of a sudden the next day or 3 days later, 4 days later, someone comes to you and just gives you this money, the exact amount of money. There's no coincidence. This will change your belief systems. It changed your belief systems. And that's exactly why I created this. That way it's a reminder for you. Put on your nightstand, take it to work with you. You know, wherever you need it to remind you to use this and do this before you go to sleep at night and really see the results of it. Really be persistent and consistent at creating the life of your dreams. All right, guys, that's the end of this video. I love you guys. Don't forget the one thing you are grateful for in the column box below. Don't forget the 10K challenge. That's the very first link in the description. Also pin that in the comments. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.